creativity is like a drug. You will get a buzz out of something that you instinctively know will work.
Hi, this is the Ignoramus's Guide to Surviving Humanity. I'm Ileana Chan, and I'm here with author Ivy Ngeow. I said your name right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So I finished reading your book, Overboard, which was like, I read it so quickly because I was just like so intrigued by the story, no spoilers. It was really fun. And then I just started reading this. It was so interesting because Cry of the Flying Rhino. It was so interesting because I just realized reading them both that I think I've never actually read a book with a Malaysian Chinese character that lives in London. Definitely not that, because that's very specific. But even like a Malaysian Chinese character, or like an Iban character, anything like that, I was like, oh my God, I've read so many books in my life, but somehow I have not read, so even that made me think like, wow, how is that? How did I even get to this place? And how does it affect, my mentality or my empathy for other people? And maybe like, not less empathy for, Malaysians but it's really interesting that there's like less of an exploration in my life. So that was my first like weird takeaway from it. So for you, and it makes me think also that because we just don't have that sort of representation that much in novels, especially, like how few Malaysian authors there are too. It's like a perpetual cycle, like a self-feeding cycle.
We are definitely a minority.
Yeah, right. So like, how did you even become a novelist yourself? What was that journey like?
I started with writing short stories, and I've always really enjoyed them. I somehow, since I was a child, I have always made up stories. I've always had an interest in taking it a step further. I was not very interested in facts or things that actually happened. I've always been interested in other worlds that were made up, people that were made up. And I made up stories for my younger brothers when I was a child. Since I could write, I was writing stories. But I first had any national interest in my work when I was 16, and I submitted my short story to the Straits Times to a national competition. And in the old days, there was no such thing as young adult or YA. You're either a child or an adult. So I had to enter as an adult, even though I was writing teen fic, short stories for teenagers. So I was mentioned. I was given a highly commended recommendation by the judges, and I won a weekend workshop in KL. And it was the first time I actually traveled out of my own city without my parents to attend this workshop, which was a writing workshop, and it was at the Straits Times office.
Wow. Johor is so close to Singapore, but you've never been to Singapore?
No, I have been to Singapore, but not to KL on my own.
Okay.
To the city.
Not
yeah.
by yourself. Yeah.
Not by myself. So and that gave me kind of the hope that what I was writing was actually of interest. And I remember that my parents were very supportive, which is why I'm actually a writer. They've always thought whatever I was doing was great. No matter what it was, it was brilliant. And I remember thinking that because I wrote the story by hand and you had to submit a typewritten copy, my mother typed it out. I actually dictated it to my mom, who typed it out, and she can't even type. She was using 2 fingers. And I remember thinking that she must really like doing this, but I had no idea that it's not. It's because you, as a creative person, need family support in no matter whatever way.
That's so true. It's so invaluable to have that
that they
that other
want to
people
put in.
believe
Yes,
in you.
other people's time, energy, and belief in you.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's amazing. And it's quite stereotypically quite rare. I mean, for I guess Asian, like stereotypically Asian parents are less supportive of the arts generally. But I mean, my parents are very supportive, but like the
Yeah.
stereotype of the Asian parent is that
I think you'll
engineering
find that.
law
I think you'll
kind of
find
thing.
that it's really important for especially in the creative arts, in our industry, because it's very subjective. There is no right or wrong in what we're doing.
Yeah, that's so true. So how did you go from doing short stories to fast forward writing like this? This book is your first full-length novel,
Yes.
is it? Yeah.
Yes, it's my first novel, and I wrote it when I was 35. So between
Wow.
the ages of 16 and 35, I wrote on and off when I was in uni, when I was working. I always wrote short stories, and I always read short stories as well. So I found myself very gripped by really punchy short pieces. I was very interested in short films, anything that was really indie and a bit odd. So I think a bit odd and dark. I would say that's probably my genre. Um, and
What is it about that genre that draws you to it? Because
I
this
think
is I mean, I haven't started reading. I mean, I've just started reading this, so I haven't really gotten to the meat of it, but it is still very intriguing, sort of mystery.
mystery, yeah,
Mysteries is a genre, right? Like,
mystery,
or Overboard is
suspense.
definitely a mystery suspense.
I think that I'm very influenced by the writers that I read myself when I was young. Obviously, during my formative years, I've always been interested in authors like Raymond Carver or um, Daphne du Maurier.
Oh
So
wow,
they're
yeah.
all in that dark genre, or a little bit twisted, a little bit odd, and an ordinary day that's gone weird. So I find that myself like being able to identify with people who are really ordinary as well, like regular people like you and I. Um, but something happens in their lives which transforms them. So
Yeah.
those kind of characters interest me.
And I think it's so interesting, like reading this, The Cry of the Flying Rhino. I think so. One of the things that is interesting to me is that our culture, actually, like Sarawak culture, Malaysian culture, we do have this,
Mhm.
like within our culture, this like us townies from the city, when we go to the rainforest, like when we go to the jungle, like there is that
Mm-mm-mm.
mysterious element of the jungle, like a lot of the locals making fun of us. There is that element already, like just being surrounded by the jungle in Sarawak,
Mhm.
of the sort of mystery of the jungle. But there is that, which I think would lend itself really well to Gothic stories, like you're saying, like this,
Mm.
you know. But there is also the part that I would worry about, like with like certain movies that,
Mm.
like, Edge of the World was one of the ones that we had talked about, where they
Yeah.
kind of like make anything with the jungle or like native people sort of sinister. So
Yeah,
there
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah,
that,
yeah.
yeah, so there's like fine line that we have to, I mean, I don't know, I feel like you don't want to like lean into stereotypes that are detrimental to our people, and
Uh-huh.
yet you want to explore all these things. Like, did you feel any of that sort of balance when you were writing?
So one of the wonders of writing is that you put yourself in the characters and they put themselves into you. So I find that it's really hard to write stereotypes because we're not all stereotypes. They come alive on their own because you've put something to them, you've breathed life into them. And when I think when you put your characters into settings, we can see how they react to certain things or what they do and what they say. I find that a lot of this is evident from, like, obviously from like the culture that influences us, the culture that we grew up in. um for example, I mean, when I was growing up, I loved Alfred Hitchcock movies. So that kind of genre, Alfred Hitchcock, they are always regular people, and you don't even know that much about them, and yet they do things which surprise you.
Right.
So it is actually harder to create stereotypes than to
Right.
create original characters.
Because you need to be subverting the expectations of the reader. So if you're just stereotypical,
Yeah.
then yeah, obviously that doesn't work. Well, that's really interesting. So when you were writing this, Cry of the Flying Rhino, what sort of sparked the inspiration for it?
So my first novel was written when I was 35, which is 16 years ago. And I was doing my master's at Middlesex Uni. So in North London, very close to you.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And I was quite influenced by the texts that we were reading in uni. And a lot of them were about the abolition of slavery.
Oh, wow.
And the 18th century history of slaves in the UK. And I just started to think about, how about our modern day slaves? Do you think that do you think that that's a subgroup? Do they exist? And I started looking into it in depth. And I also had this dream as well, that was in a longhouse. So from those settings, I thought, well, this is very good because it's very dark. A longhouse is dark because it needs to keep out the light, the heat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's also in the jungle, so it's
And the jungle is dark. And
yeah.
if you've read I think in the beginning bit, I did say that some parts of the jungle are eternally night. It never ever gets daylight because the rainforest is so thick.
Wow.
So I thought that this is a great premise, a great setting for a world that is probably quite unknown to most people. Like
Yeah.
the Borneo rainforest is pretty much unknown. And the struggles between nature and the built environment. So these are themes that I wanted to explore.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I love that. And it's so atmospheric as well, as you were saying.
Mm,
So how
yeah.
do you decide also, because you were saying like the characters are part of you and you are part of the characters, it becomes, how much do you decide? Do you have an idea of like, oh, this is how much I'm putting in? Like, is there any sort of limitations to how personal you are with the characters?
Um, I don't think so, because once you created a character, uh, the in order to form a narrative, uh, the character must go through a transformation arc. So whatever character you start off with, they have to go through a certain, and it's evident in movies. I mean, I can't explain this enough, but that movies teach us,
Right.
what we need to know about characters. Why did they do what they did, and what happens to them?
Right.
From the beginning to the end, what happens to them? And that is what I mean by the arc. They have to be able to be transformed.
Right. Yeah. So the protagonist for both of them, I mean, the protagonist is really the character that gets the most transformation, let's say, like within that structure, right? So for both of them, I mean, I think so. Like having said, I just started Cry of the Flying Rhino. But Overboard, the protagonist, even though it's like multi-view, um, I do think of the protagonist as you, that character that says you, that you title you. And so because even though it's kind of personal, you become the character becomes you. Why did you choose to have like two male protagonists? I think Heart of Glass is a female protagonist, but
Oh yes,
I didn't
yeah, Heart
manage to
of
get that
Glass.
one.
Yeah. So why did I choose two male protagonists? Well,
Yeah,
because I think that in every woman there is a bit of man, and that's, sometimes our viewpoints uh, are relevant are relevant to how we can express them. So for example, if I wanted to express certain actions as a male character, then I would do it through the male characters.
Right. Okay. So it's like but it was easy for you to slip, because I mean, when I'm reading it, it's just, it does feel like I'm reading about a man, it's not like it's such it's not like it's like, oh, this is a woman writing as a man sort of thing. No, it's like, so it's easy for you to slip into those characters when you get into the mindset of them.
I think that's another wonder of creative writing, because you can be whoever. We could write from a child's viewpoint. It doesn't mean I'm a child. Or I could write from a viewpoint of someone with cancer. It doesn't mean I'm suffering from cancer. I think one of the things about creative writing is being in another world and in another person.
So how do you cultivate that sort of creativity? Because I think, like, in order to go from a short story to a novel, that's quite a huge leap. I mean, in terms of creative confidence as well. And so how do you cultivate that within you? What was that journey like for you?
So I think that what you brought up is very relevant, which is that short stories are completely different from novels. I mean, they are different genres completely. It's like, I think that a lot of people have described short stories as having like a scene or up to 3 scenes that work, and not very in-depth character exploration. Whereas, I mean, you've just read the novels, they have to be fully developed characters to be capable of whatever it is that they've done in, like, I can't remember, 100 over scenes. So so that's the difference. So once you've invested the time in a short story, I feel that time can't be invested in a novel, because a novel is a different kind of thing. It's like a marathon, not a sprint. It involves a year of training, whereas a sprint may not, because it's to do with speed.
Oh, that's so interesting. Right. So when you were making that transition, how did you shift that mindset?
Exactly, as a long distance runner, you plan out ahead what you're going to be training in this whole year, what you're going to be doing and not doing. So I think that it's a classic case. And I mean, much as I hate it because I'm a creative person, but spreadsheets.
Wow.
If you can get your spreadsheets
Wow.
going to plan out your program, like your schedule, like in 4 months, what would I've achieved, or in 2 weeks, what should I have achieved in 2 weeks?
Wow.
So it's a bit like, it's like a long distance training.
Yeah, that's really fascinating, because that makes me think as well of, like, there's so many things about creativity that are challenging, like procrastination, belief in yourself. I mean, I guess it's all very similar. Discipline. And also just like sometimes, I mean, right now I'm writing a screenplay and I do have some structure and I have some help, but sometimes when I'm writing it, and before I got that help, that outside external help, it was just like, it felt endless and impossible to quantify, because it was like, oh, I have to write 120 pages. And like, if you're writing a novel, that's so much more. And if you just start without your plan and without, like, I can imagine writing a novel over like 20 years, because it's like, if you don't have that structure.
I actually find short stories a lot harder. I have won a couple of prizes in short stories, but I would say that they are still harder than a novel, because a short story has to have one idea, that is so good, so fabulous, that it can never be replicated again. And that's why it's very hard. Whereas I know the irony is, okay, I've got to write 80,000 words, but a novel is easier in that sense, because you can deal with 3 or 4 ideas, and if they're bad, you can just get rid of those and have another 3 ideas, and they would still, be in your overall theme. A novel is themed, and a short story isn't, because it's to do with that hook, that glittering one idea. I mean, you've seen it, like a lot, like some movies have been made from just one short story.
Yeah, but I'm trying to think of any now. That a lot of times I think what happens though is that, because I mean, I totally understand what you mean, because I've seen so many shorts that are shorts, you know, they're made as shorts. Usually they have a trajectory that ends with a twist of some sort. There's a subversion at
It
the
has
end.
to end with a bang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's understandable. But a lot of these movies that are really good as a feature, they often make the short in order to, with the feature in mind, in order to get funding. So that's sometimes like a little bit different type of short, you know?
Yeah. Yes. I totally know what you mean. That's like the pitch feature.
Yeah. It's like, this is how it's going to look,
The
sort of
pitch
thing.
short. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But a lot of them are successful because they already have that feature film outline when they've presented the short, you know? So it's a different mindset again. You're right.
Yeah. Yes.
So what sort of like daily habits do you have to continue that sort of the creative discipline, especially when you're looking over like a year of planning your novel out?
So I actually this year I was on a challenge, and I got very excited because I only just learned Google Sheets. So I and I decided to do
I don't know
a
how to use
sheet just
Google
to
Sheets.
track. Yeah, to track. I know,
Oh my
once you've
God.
discovered it, you realize that, oh my goodness, you don't, it's free. You don't even need to buy any software that helps creativity, because I don't think any software can work as well as your hardware. Do you know what I mean?
Right,
So
yeah.
I feel that that's something that you have to generate yourself. And so this year I actually wrote a novel in 37 days,
What?
because I know I divided it. I couldn't believe it, because but the thing is, the 37 days are spread over since January to July. So
Okay.
I spread it over then, because every time I had an hour spare, I wrote. Every time I had 2 hours spare, I wrote. And some of it was as short as 16 minutes. You know, I don't have time all the time, so I'm not going to be able to spend 8 hours writing, and nobody does. There's no such thing.
Right. Oh wow.
So
Okay.
I started to put, when I keyed in all those word counts and the time, my aim had been just to find out what's my word count per day, and the average was like I can't remember, 800 words or something, but that's divided out by the 37 days
Wait, do you
in
mean
which,
that, like, so if you wrote 16 minutes in one day, would that count as one day, or would that count as
that will
16
count as
minutes?
one day. Yes, that's
Oh
one session.
wow.
One
Okay.
session of one day. So 16 minutes, I might not do much. I might only do I don't know, 100 or 200 words. But that's okay. I think that, you know,
Interesting.
every word that you write, it's okay. It's fine. I think that we tend to beat ourselves up. Why are we not writing 3,000 words today? I mean, it doesn't work like that. It's
Yeah.
creativity. You're making up something,
And
you
something's
know.
happening in your mind sometimes, you know, even though you're not writing it down, right? That's what I tell
Yes,
myself.
exactly. I always think that it's all happening in the hardware, isn't it? So
Right.
I'm only doing this to track. When I say
Mm.
that, oh, I'm not writing, I wrote nothing, I'm not writing, is that true, or did I write? Or, you know, I just thought that it would be good to track this in and account for it, you know, account for what I write. And I also wanted to dare myself, like, could I do this and just keep track of the words, even if it's 20 words? Why not just write that down? Because I achieved something, and that's better than zero. And on some days it's zero, and I actually put that down too, so that I can account for it, that on that day I could not write, and that's okay too.
Oh. So it's like you tracked every day, like for the 37 days. You would
Every
just
day.
track a day would count if you sat down and wrote. And even if you,
Yeah,
I mean,
that
even if
counts
you
as
didn't
a
write a
day.
day, even if you didn't write a word, that still
Yes,
counts as a day.
yes,
Oh
I did.
wow. And you
Yeah,
still
so that,
managed to
yeah.
do 30, you still managed to finish a book in 37 days.
Yes, I did it. I couldn't believe it. I
Wow.
actually did it, and I thought that it can't be wrong. It's Google Sheets. I mean, it adds it up for you. They add up
Right.
the time, they add up the day. So what I wanted to work out was my word count per hour and word count per day. And
Wow.
yeah, so I finished that novel, which is it's a sequel to Overboard.
Oh, wow.
So one of
Ooh,
the
who does
characters,
it? Oh,
the Chinese girl, one of the characters is
Phoebe.
from her, yeah, Phoebe.
Oh,
Is from her
good.
viewpoint.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's very
Yeah.
interesting. I don't want to give anything away, but like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I actually did have questions about like, what's going to happen beyond the book. So that's very interesting, exciting that you're writing a sequel. So that's really good. So that was one of the things that you did, the Google Sheets, which
Yeah.
I'm actually
Which
really
helps with
excited to
creative.
look at now. Like, I'm just like, I mean, I obviously have seen the program, but I've never figured out how to
Do you
use
know
it.
what? I'm gonna send it to you.
Oh my God, really? Thank you.
I can send you the spreadsheet because I've done all the formula. I've keyed in the formula to help you do the averages and the totals.
Ooh, amazing. Okay, thank you so much. Um, would that be okay to share with our audience as well, if anybody
Yes,
wanted
of
to?
course. Yeah, of
Okay,
course.
yeah.
You can
If
just
anyone wanted
it's
to,
huge. So maybe just you could just do a screen
a screen
shot
grab
if
for
you
them
want.
to see
Yes,
what it's
yeah,
like. Yeah, because that leads me to my next
absolutely.
question, which is like, what advice would you give to someone who's just starting out writing?
I think that my best advice would be to keep reading, to read every day.
Okay, yeah.
If you're not reading, then you can't be writing, because I feel that reading is an extension of writing, and writing is an extension of reading. They go together, and our minds work in that way. So the more you
Yeah, I
read, the
agree
more
with this.
ideas you'll have, and the more you will have the creative urge. Um,
Oh, yeah, that's so true. I totally feel that in terms of like reading screenplays. Like that helps me a lot to read.
mm,
Um,
yes,
are there
exactly.
any books that you, before I get into another technical question about that, but are there
Mhm.
any authors or books that you are really into right now that you are inspired by?
Recently, I've really got into Chris Bojalian.
Oh, I love him. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, I think, yeah, it's the one, I think, no, I think I have
the
read a few
flight
books.
attendant. Yeah,
Oh, right.
the
Oh,
flight
I was
attendant
thinking
on
something
HBO
else.
Max. So
Okay, I haven't read that, but I think I've read some of his previous work, if I'm
yeah.
thinking of the right author. Yeah, did you actually watch the TV show for that?
No, I didn't watch the TV show because I've heard they've made it a comedy, but the book, it isn't a comedy. It's the stuff that I like very dark and very suspenseful.
Yeah, it's not
Uh,
that funny in a haha way. Like even though
okay.
they put it in the genre of comedy, it's not.
Yeah.
It's still quite dark, but I'm very curious
Okay.
what you would think of the final product. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
that's
Uh,
interesting.
and the
Yeah.
other author that I really like is Shari LaPena, and she's actually Canadian, and she writes domestic thrillers set
Mm.
in some fictitious town in upstate New York. So they're very, very interesting. And I actually Googled the town that they're set in because I was so excited. I thought I would go to this place. It's like beautiful. It's fantastic.
Oh my gosh, I want to read that now.
Like
Sherry
it's
LaPena.
got, yeah, buildings, the places, the river, the lakes. And I just thought this place is fantastic and I want to go there. And it doesn't exist.
Oh, okay.
There's actually the wiki page on it that this is a fictitious setting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. That reminds me of this other Canadian author that I also detective novels called Louise Penny. Have you heard of her?
No, I haven't.
Oh,
Louise
she
Penny. Yeah.
Louise
Okay.
Penny, and she has
Okay.
like kind of like a. I mean, his personality is nothing like Poirot, but it is kind of like that sort of
Ah, okay.
where you follow one detective that's very good at what he does. I mean, it's written
Okay.
very differently from Agatha Christie, but she also
Yeah.
has like this very picturesque, made up village that's like
Yeah.
really
Oh,
beautiful.
yeah. Really beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so what if, okay, so now that we've sort of like covered the, sort of like how to make, well, I guess we could talk a little bit more about like, so you have this idea of almost like creating a challenge for yourself, a creative challenge for yourself with the Google Sheets. Do you
So it
do
starts with the aim. I think that you have, when you start Google Sheets, you always have to start with the aim. You can't look at a blank sheet and think, how I'm going to fill this up.
right?
You kind of have to like, you got to have an end point in sight so that, exactly like the long distance training. No runner goes through training without knowing the end product. Like, what are you trying to achieve? What speed are you trying to achieve? What length, what distance? So all that kind of thing, mapping it
Yeah.
out.
Are
Yeah.
you doing a marathon or are you doing a 5K? It's like makes a huge difference, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so what do you do to and you read to sort of create to allow those
Read.
creative juices to get going? Are there anything
Yeah.
else that you do that like helps with creative juices or like helps with
Yeah. I think that it actually helps to get into a creative lifestyle or a creative way of living. That helps with the mindset that we've just been talking about, because I think that no matter what you're doing, uh, I find that it's good to express yourself, like to express what you feel or think. I think that's the basis, the very, very basis of being a creative person. Because if you're not expressing, then it isn't creative. It's something that what you're doing is not creative.
And so what
So,
do you mean by expressing? In what ways are you expressing?
meaning that you can think differently about something that you're doing. So, for example, if you're baking, you could think differently. You don't have to follow everything to the letter. You could make up something, make it up. You don't have to follow everything. So I think that we non-creative people will find that very difficult, because obviously they that's not right. That doesn't sound right. Yeah, we can't do
Yes.
that. And there's
Yeah.
also the can't thing. But I think that once you start to think the can't this and can't that, then I feel that you're just slicing off parts of your creativity instead of letting it grow, because it could grow, and you have to make mistakes, because no successful idea has ever come from not making mistakes. We all have to go through it, because that's how you grow ideas. So I just feel that, when you look at people who are successful, or ideas which are successful, things that have happened that worked well, that is the result of creativity. It has never been the result of no experimentation and not thinking up new things. We think of new things because we are growing them. It's like you have to see it as an organic thing, or something that you develop, like a plant, or, as I said, like cooking or baking, whatever. You're growing something from nothing. It didn't exist before, right?
Right.
So I think that once you start to think in different ways, that means you are expressing yourself. I really truly believe that.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I like that idea. How do you, for you, what was your journey like to figure out your own voice, your own creative voice, and how to get confident within that voice? Because, like you said, you try a lot of things, and then they might like not
They
fail, but
might
they might
fail.
not work the way you want it to work, or it fail. You could say fail, yeah.
I
But
think
how
that's
do you
okay, but I think when you're
how do
young,
you
it's
tell?
very devastating.
You have an idea, and I think like that's the part of creativity, as you, from my understanding of this conversation anyway, and also how I think of creativity myself, is you have an idea, you're excited about it, you're motivated, and you sort of like follow up on that idea, and that's how creativity sort of gathers momentum. But you have to have an awareness that not all your ideas are going to be a tree. Some of them are just going to kind of grow a little and then sort of maybe die. But I guess the question is the question for me is, how do you differentiate between an idea that leads to maybe a failure or like a mistake, or just doesn't lead anywhere, an idea that doesn't lead anywhere or is a bad idea, and your own like self-critical judgment against your creativity?
I think that a good idea is one that will develop. So it starts off as a seed. And I kind of also very superstitious and uh, feel that you ought to know. You get a real buzz. And creativity is like a drug. You will get a buzz out of something that you instinctively know will work. And I just feel that way. Like if somebody said, uh, are you interested in making a kale burger, for example? I would say no, I'm not interested in it. So I know that that idea will not work for me, but it might work for
Right.
somebody else. So I wouldn't say, I think it's a totally personal thing. That's just for me, it won't work because I will take the kale and throw it away. That's what I will
Right.
do. Because in my heart, I am not interested in it. That's why I think that
Right.
a lot of the ideas that interest us are the ideas that make us really excited, like
Right.
thrilled, thrilled about it, So I think that and there's no feeling like it, I would say, because that thrill just comes. And if it comes and you did not recognize it, then that's the idea gone. That's what I mean by being open. Being creative is always being open to new ideas. You may never know what will give you that buzz.
Interesting. Because the thing too is, and I think that maybe the part of creative confidence and creative voice
Hmm.
is getting that idea, running with that idea, being very excited about that idea, and being able, like, to get to the finish line. Like, I know a lot of people who love to start something, but they kind of lose interest halfway through. And so, like, I guess the question is, like, what part of that is like instinct? What part of that is self defeatism? And what part of that is just, you know,
I think it's okay because being open to ideas means that I think, well, ideas are like children. Some are going to do really well and some not going to do very well, but that's okay. I think that that all of them have some meaning or relevance to your own development as an artist.
right. What
But
about like just the idea of, do you feel a sort of a drudgery at certain parts of writing a novel? Like if it's,
yeah, of
that you
course, yeah.
believe, yeah. So that's different from, oh, this idea is not good. That's just like, there's going to be a part of writing that novel that's like, you just putting in the hours. I guess what I was trying to say is, like, there's a certain discipline to creativity, to finishing that book. That means that you're not always going to have the buzz all the way through. Like, how do you deal with that part when it just feels like uh, um, the the part that's like drudgery a little bit? How do you keep motivating yourself?
So if it's very, very boring, you could do something else that's really exciting. So that's part of like um being self-inspired, self-motivation. Because no one's going to cheer you up and go, hey, let's go. You don't have a coach to come and like help you get out and have cocktails or whatever. You may not have that. You may have to do all that yourself and inspire yourself. So you could stop and do something exciting. um, you could have take a look at the goal again and just do a bit, like the 20 words, and you'll be amazed how much that those 20 words will help you, because then you realize that it's still there. It's just you're just maybe very tired or something, because you can get really tired of being this awesome writer that you are. You can have too much of awesome. So you know and and you can run out as well. You can run out of the juice. But
Right.
I think that because it's a drug, um there's always a bit left.
Mm.
You always gonna need that next hit. And I found myself doing it. If I wanted to have a hit of the 20 words, 5 words, I would go and get it, because I
Mm.
know that's what I need for to get on with it.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. What about, how do you deal with, so it's awesome, you finished it, you have belief in it, but how do you deal with, say, feedback or criticism? Um, how do you, yeah, how do you do that? Like, how do you sort of know when to listen to other people and know when not to, and how do you actually navigate that sort of thing?
Yes, really good question actually, because I think that one of the hardest things to take is that is criticism, because this is your own person that you're laying out. So you are very vulnerable. You have already done a brave thing by getting it out, your freedom of expression. So what you can only trust people that you trust. So basically people who read a lot in your genre, who know what they're reading. It's no good listening to people who are criticizing you, who have no idea what they're reading, because obviously are not the um, they are not analyzing it in the way that they should be.
Right, yeah. They
Yeah,
might
it's
not be
like,
even who you're aiming to be your demographic reader.
yeah, it's not they are not your audience, so who cares?
Yeah.
So it's kind of, I know, also as a writer or as an artist or anybody, I think you'd have to be who cares a lot more, because um it doesn't really impact on you unless the quality of your work is poor. If the quality
Right.
of your work is good and you have made sure in every way that it is good, it's written well, it's got a good story, etc., it's been edited, etc., and then I think that you have more of a gravitas and more of a reason to ignore the negative reviews.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Because you have
Mm.
confidence in the product that you've created. So it could just, beyond that, it's just really subjective, isn't it? So,
Yeah,
so
I
you,
think it's important to get a criticism at the early stage too. You
okay.
were saying about, oh yeah, it's such a long process, etc. I think at the early stage it's good to know what kind of um what is your aim, your target audience. I think it's important to do that, because if you don't have a target audience, then this kind of criticism will come along, because they obviously are not your target audience. I think know your reader
Right,
is
yeah.
is 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 a good is a good piece of advice from the start.
So if you have just started your first novel, for someone who's like a person that's like trying to become a published author, what would the steps that you would advise?
um read. I would finish writing something, get criticism nice and early, and I actually really believe in getting it edited well.
So hire
um
an editor that's a
I would hire an
professional editor.
editor, even if it's for a few thousand words, or the first 10,000 words, or first 30,000 words,
Mm,
whatever it is that you'd have done. I think it's been helpful for me, like criticism wise, because their editors are they teach you about yourself.
right.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
not just correct.
So even before trying to submit this to a publishing house or something, you
Yeah, I never done that before, because I've always thought, okay, I'm done now, hit send. But I feel that now I'm trying to achieve a higher quality of submission, because my standards obviously have got a lot higher since I've been published. I feel that I no way I can't hit send.
right.
I don't even do that with emails now. I kind of think through a long time before I submit something, even even a quick email. What is it I'm trying to say, and so on. I think that writing something really well is a gift, is a skill.
Right. That makes sense.
Mm.
And do you think that they have to, at what point do you get an agent, a literary agent?
So I think that you'd have to finish writing it first, your manuscript, and
And getting it edited?
I personally feel that you should get it edited, unless you're already an editor yourself, or
Right.
you don't mind, you think it's pretty good already, and you don't mind just sending it. So at that point, you could probably write into agents. whom of course you have to research well to make sure, again, to make sure the same thing, that they are your target
Right.
agent.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, and then they will help you submit to publishers.
Yes.
So 2 things that we have up, I think, is like one thing is that you're actually collecting stories for an anthology. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I'm going to be editing and curating an anthology of top Asian writing for next year. And I think it'd be a good opportunity to find diverse voices writing about Asia, stories which are set in Southeast Asia or Asia by all kinds of writers, not just Asian writers. And this anthology we put out and published in London next year.
So are there any other requirements apart from it has to be Asian? It has to be about Asia.
About Asia
And short, maybe.
Short,
Yeah.
1,000 to 5,000 words. You can
Mhm.
submit more than once. And the most important thing is the writers will be paid a share of royalties.
That's good. Okay, and then so beyond that, what are you looking for, like for you personally, when you're looking at the writing?
That's a really, really good question. I love it. I'm actually looking at contemporary writing because I feel that there's been a lot of focus on World War II, especially on Southeast Asia writing. And I feel that we have a lot to share about what's been happening in the last 70 years in Asia. And I'm not looking for anything to do with COVID or the pandemic, because I think everybody's sick of it. And we don't want another anthology about the
Making
pandemic.
banana bread or something. Whatever.
Sourdough.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I feel that I think stories about life now or modern life in Asia would be really relevant.
Yeah. I mean, it also makes me realize like how, like I was saying in the beginning of this, that there's so little Asian fiction
There's
that
so
I've
little.
really, read. And I mean, granted, I could seek out Southeast Asian voices, Malaysian authors, etc., but it does require quite a bit of research to find. Like you're saying, you are in the minority, so it's not just that it's not like I've been avoiding Asian writers. It's that you have to actively seek them out. So, and I actually want to do that. So that's kind of a good thing too.
Yes, and I wanted to give a voice as well to people from all over the world who would be writing. I feel that we as Asians have something to be gained from viewpoints from other people's eyes, and as you know, as well as our own. I feel that we have a lot to share with the world on, you know, our viewpoints about Asia.
Yeah, I think especially now there's I guess on one hand there's more of a opening up to diversity, and yet there's very few authentic voices, though. I mean, that we in the West, I guess, see like or hear a lot or read a lot of. I mean, I find that especially when you're reading any media news report, you see like why some people just don't know anything about the country. You know, and so it's easy to fall for certain narratives because it's like, you know, it's that you've never even been to that country, so you would just believe they would do anything, you know, sort of thing. So yeah. Also, in October, your book Overboard was chosen by Partners in Crime podcast as their book of the month. I mean, I should definitely post something. We tweeted stuff, but then I should post something because people can actually get a free copy of your book, an ebook, if they actually sign up for that podcast. So that's great.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. What was that process like? How did they discover your book?
Well, my book Overboard in September was a finalist in the Reader's Favorite Book Awards in Miami, and it had
Congratulations.
received a very good report from the judges. It didn't win any awards, but it was a finalist.
Yeah,
So
that's a big deal.
yeah, so I when a Partners in Crime podcast saw that, they got in touch and said, I said to them, does it qualify for Partners in Crime? And they said, yeah, yes, it does, because it has to be published on Kobo as well, Barnes and Noble
Okay.
Kobo, which it is. So so they said that, we're going to feature your book.
Oh, okay, cool. That's really
Yeah.
exciting. Has the reception for Overboard matched what you were hoping for, or exceeded what you were hoping for?
I would say yes. I think that Overboard has done really well in all the countries that it has been published in, but I haven't actually, because it came out during the pandemic. It came out on the
Right.
20th of March 2020, so
Wow.
it was like no worse time for it to come out. So I've largely been promoting it only digitally. Like, I have never had a physical book launch for this book, even though I was booked to go back to promote it in Singapore, Malaysia, and Australia in
Oh, wow.
August of 2020. Obviously, that did not happen, and it's not happening this year either. So I feel that I've done a good job of it, that it is promoted, even globally distributed and promoted in the last 20 months or whatever.
Did Cry of the Flying Rhino, did you actually go to Singapore and Malaysia to launch it?
Yes, I did. And it came out in Hong Kong, so it was first launched in
Oh,
Hong Kong,
wow.
and then I promoted it in Singapore, Malaysia.
Did you
And
find any difference in reception from country to country?
um the reception has been very warm, because this is Asia we're talking about, and if anybody knows Asian hospitality, it's right there. There is nothing like it. So I would say that, yeah, it was very well received, and I'd love to be able to promote another novel when I can, in person.
Yeah, that'd be great. To also just see your fans like in person and have them tell you what
Yeah.
they think. I mean, I can imagine that'd be really amazing. Which I'm sure you will be able to soon, maybe next year.
Yeah, the only sad thing is I've never promoted in the US, and I've always wanted to get into that market, because my books are sold, obviously in US, Canada, and but my fans have largely remained on online.
Okay, so not
Yeah.
not as much in the US just yet.
No,
Like it's
because
a
I've
different.
never appeared in person there.
Oh, okay. So you
Mm.
can't. I mean, so now that it's also won and I mean, was a finalist in the Miami. I mean,
Mhm.
it seems like there's audience there if you can get there, right?
Yeah. So anyway, the irony is that I won't get to meet Brad Pitt, because if had I won a gold or silver or bronze, Brad Pitt gives out the award
What? Are you serious?
in October. In this month.
Oh my gosh, I didn't realize that he was a literary person. I didn't think so. Is that real?
This is a big award. This is a big deal.
Yeah,
This
that is
the
a
reader's
huge
favorite.
deal. I mean, that's a huge deal, but wow. But I just didn't think of Brad Pitt as being involved in reading that much. I mean, I guess that makes sense too, because his production company obviously gets a lot of rights from books, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So because they produce a lot of stories, movies. So wow, that would be an amazing thing, I'm sure. I mean, more amazing. I mean, to win it in the first place is amazing, and to be a finalist is already a huge deal. So yeah, congratulations indeed. Do you want to talk a little bit about like your next few projects, maybe? I mean, you talked a bit about the sequel, but anything else you want to
Yes.
say about
Okay.
it?
I've actually got two. I have two unpublished novel right now. The sequel to Overboard, and I also wrote a prequel to Heart of Glass, which is set in Chicago in 1971. So this is in two viewpoints. One is JJ, the handyman, and his girlfriend Dallas. So Dallas was a character in Heart of Glass who was the partner in crime to Leanne, the Chinese American girl. So this prequel uh, is largely from the viewpoint of JJ, the handyman, who gets a fixing up job at uh, at a wealthy um, what is he? He's a wealthy arts patron
Oh, okay.
at his mansion. But there he discovers some undesirable secrets. And he's now beginning to wonder why he got that job in the first place.
Oh, okay. So, can you talk a little bit about what Heart of Glass is about? Because that's actually, I didn't see that one when I was buying books. Yeah, I haven't read that one yet. But
So
I
yeah,
think
Heart
it's
of
set in
Glass is
Macau, right?
yes, it's set in Macau. So it's the girl in the prequel. She was 14 then, but in Heart of Glass she's 23. So she's a Chinese American girl who is of Singaporean origin, and she's an immigrant in Chicago, and she's a school dropout, but she's very talented in music. So she gets offered a job in Macau as a piano player in a club. So she's very excited and jumps at it. But when she's there, she gets involved with some casino bigwigs who was
Uh,
just starting the disco phenomenon in Asia. So she gets into trouble, and she has to
oh,
figure a way of getting out and getting back to Chicago.
oh, wow. So why did you decide to set it in Macau and Chicago?
I I read a book called Thrilling Cities by Ian Fleming, and it's published in the 60s. It's actually a very old book that I found in a market in Penang, in Chow Rasta Market. And I just thought, this is fascinating. Like, these are the thrilling cities of the 60s and 70s. And both of them were in the book. And they're cities of vices.
Right, that's true. I see that.
You,
So
you
is
know,
this Heart of Glass like written in the 60s and so is it set in the 60s or 70s?
it's actually set in 1981.
Oh, okay, wow.
Yeah.
So it's like a very different time, like for both places, obviously.
Yeah.
But in terms of crime and like organized
Yes.
crime and
Yes,
mafia,
organized crime.
whatever.
So they are both organized crime thrillers. Um, and
Okay.
I'm actually considering writing a third in the series as well.
Like
So
the sequel to Heart of Glass,
yeah.
you think? Oh, interesting.
Yes. I only just started planning it last week. So this is amazing timing.
Wow. That's exciting. Yeah, I want to read that as well. It's really, what was it about? So you read that book from Ian Fleming. What was it
And
about
yes,
Chicago and Macau?
I was, one of the things that this is why my advice is to read if you want to write, because when you read, you get hooked by certain concepts which are like really gripping, and you don't know why. You just absolutely love it. You know how when people like, I don't know, people who get crazy about like orchids or
Right.
cycling or whatever, something catches them and they're hooked. And I feel the same with like ideas and about reading. Sometimes you catch hold of an image that is so glittery and so amazing, it stays with you, that image. And those are ideas. So I got really caught up with photographs old photographs in this book of Macau and Chicago and gambling and smuggling and entertainment girls, and drugs. And I just thought that it would be interesting to set a story that it was both East and West. So again, I looked into it and I was thinking, there's none. I
Oh,
love this, the
really?
whole idea of these worlds, colliding worlds, and
Yeah.
yet there's nothing. That is hard to find, and
Interesting.
especially hard to find one that is by an Asian author who is also
Right.
female. So I was thinking that, these are all written by, like, white guys.
Yeah. It is so
That kind
different.
that kind of crime, that kind of crime. So I was thinking,
Right.
maybe I have a viewpoint in this, and maybe this is something that I could put in. Like, as I said to you, you put in yourself into
Yeah.
into what you create.
And also you're a musician, and
Yes.
and so you can really, you have that personal experience of being a musician.
There's a
Yeah.
lot of what I have experience, and my own knowledge of the music industry, like the recording industry. I put some of the information in there, and like bands and rehearsing and things like that.
Yeah, because you were telling me that you've also recorded music professionally as well. It's not just a hobby.
Yes, in around the same time as when I wrote my first novel, I had a very creative period.
Hmm.
Um, and I was in a band. I wrote a lot of songs, and we recorded the songs. We were gigging. We were playing in big venues in London.
Wow. So why are you continuing in that vein, or is it more in that
Well, there's
vein?
been no gigs in the last
Oh
one and a
yeah,
half years,
that's true.
obviously.
But are
Yeah,
you continuing to
yeah.
write songs and stuff?
I write songs. Yeah, I continue to write songs, and I just find that it's just fun. It's like making cookies. It's like, rather than making huge wedding cakes, you're making cookies. So it's just tiny little fun things to do. Um, I mean, I enjoy playing, and it's and and performing.
What
So
about
it's
like,
something that I just want to do.
what about
Songwriting.
online? Like, do you release your songs online and stuff like that?
No, because I was looking for the lights when you started the Zoom. I'm not a very online person. I feel that I don't have that online presence or online personality. I
Yeah.
find that I'm a very in-person person. So when people were asking me, oh, why didn't you do an online book launch? Everybody's doing Zoom book launches and stuff. And I just don't. I can't. I don't want to appear live on screen for whatever reason. I feel that it's not very me. I connect very well in
In real life.
it to my audience
What
in
about
real life.
like music videos for your songs and stuff like that? Because that's almost like a
Yes.
different type of storytelling.
I think I could do that. I think I'll be okay with that, because I don't mind doing recordings of myself. I do it anyway on Instagram. I just pick up the guitar and play live, or I play piano live. And I love that it's instantaneous. I mean, that's why it's called Instagram. It's
Right.
instantaneous. I'm not rehearsed. I'm not like in costume. I just I just do it, and I think that's fun. That's part of the spontaneity of doing music. So I like, for example, like we're doing this podcast now, but I know that it's not live. So
Right.
I myself, so I don't have that thing where it's all formal, because I'm not good at formal presentations of myself.
Oh, right. Yeah, it's not live, but it is because it's just like a casual conversation.
Yeah.
I think the feeling is more like it's live. Like you can make um, mistakes or whatever, and it's not a big deal. Like when it's just a conversation
Yeah,
versus
when
like
you make
a
mistakes, it's not a big deal. Yes,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, because
Yeah.
it's
So
just
when I
casual.
when I perform live for Instagram, it literally is less than a minute or a minute. Because I don't want to go into that whole formal thing where when it's too long, it gets into that stage. Because I do spontaneous songs. I play by ear, so I just think of something and I will
Wow.
just play it. I just play. So I just thought that's just for fun. So I'm not
Okay.
appearing live. So
Oh, I
that
see
was what
what
I'm
you
trying to
mean.
say.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so there's a difference in
Yeah.
that sense. Yeah. So do you feel like you don't have a
Yeah.
does this mean that you kind of have a perfectionist side to you? I mean, is that part of it? Like,
Yeah, I'm sure that you do as well. I think all artists do.
I
We
think
we feel that we'll never be quite there or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why I'm very interested in this idea of confidence, like creative confidence versus perfection, because it's like it's the weird thing is you're trying to create what's in your mind. And I remember reading this book from a theater director, and they basically were like, there are three, like, it's like what you have in your mind, what you have down in paper that you're going to be doing, and then it's like the final product. So there's like three stages that are not the same. You can never get what's in your mind to what's on stage. It will never be exactly the same. So, but I think that creativity is kind of like that struggle of like trying to make what is in your mind real, and yet knowing that it's never going to be the same, and yet you're trying to do that. It's like a weird contradiction. And so that's the perfectionist part of like, you can feel, or I can feel, failing if it's not exactly the same, but that's part of the process. It's never going to be the same. It's just a weird push and pull, I think.
I was going to say that the Salvador Dali saying, which is that have no fear of perfection because you'll never achieve it.
Yeah, I love that.
And that's for all writers and artists, like anybody who is doing creative stuff.
Yeah, and if you go to his house, I don't know if you've been to his house in Figueres, it's like just such a interesting, like,
really,
yeah,
I've never been. No,
he creates all these little projects in his house. Like his wife's dressing room looks like a I Dream of Jeannie thing.
Really?
And like his bedroom has like a mirror that shows you, it's angled so that you can see the sunrise on the wall.
Okay,
It's just like these little projects that he has all over his house. It's really beautiful. So I love that idea. So do you have any last parting words before we wrap up?
We had a nice time chatting about a lot. We covered a lot of topics.
Yeah, we did. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And I feel inspired and motivated by this conversation. So thank you.
Me too. I think that it works two ways. I think that creativity is, is taking and giving. You can give 100%, but you get back 200%. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. We can feed off each other, and I think it's important for artists to realize that we're not alone.
Yeah, I love that idea. You're right. You're totally right. Well, thank you again. And
thank you very much.
The Ignoramus's Guide to Surviving Humanity is available as a podcast on Spotify and Amazon Music.
You can also like and subscribe to our videos on YouTube. And if you want to help us grow, then you can become a patron on Patreon. And that's it, right? I think that's it.